Hi everyone. Today I'm going to talk about the utilizing podcast in virtual FL instruction. But firstly, someone of you remember how was the pandemic in 2020? I think it was a event, the most chaotic event that we suffered. As we know, so many of us we lost a a dear member of our family, or only bad things happen. And sometimes when we are nostalgic, we think for a while, how was my life if the pandemic didn't happen? But also the pandemic bring a lot of things, a lot of technology. In all in all this technology that we suffer, or other revolution in the industry that we suffer, it was really interesting. And I think one of the most important things that happened during the pandemic was the virtual classes. I have a little memory in pandemic. I remember I was on my second year, no, my first year of high school. But the classes were really boring. Uh, I don't have any moment where I say something like, "Oh my God, it's really brilliant," or "Oh my God, this class is really important." No, I only ignore that. I was like, I have a lesson again." But in other countries and in other classes, some teachers uses some trendy tools. And all the tools that they use are the podcasts. I think the podcast did a revolution inside of the way to learn a new language. The podcast did that. And yes, the podcast is the most traditional event that we have at the time to learn something about the language. Do you know what? The podcast, the use of podcasts increased during the pandemic. I know, but in that moment, we prefer listen by some minutes, by hours. People talk about of problems, or only to spend time. In all this, we have some podcasts that treat a lot of time, a lot of topics. In all those topics, we learn something new. Yes, we learn a lot of things. Um, you know, the podcasts are really important in our days. The flexibility, also the immersive that the podcast can be for the students are really fascinating in our days. Yes, the way that the narrator tells the story is really, oh my God, what will happen the next chapter, the next chapter. we are mind blown by the way they they keep the story, that they try to convince us to follow the story in a good way. Yes, it's really interesting that how important is try to involve in that context, because there are many kinds of podcasts. So for that reason, I think are very important, and I think all the benefits are flexibility, because you can listen in where you want. You can listen when you are driving, when you are washing your. For that reason, are flexibility, are comfortable for the students, because there are some podcasts where the students they can pay for listen, or there are other podcasts that are free, are completely free. So yes, but teacher, how I relationate the use of podcasts on my classes. Well, let me tell you something. The use of podcasts in classes is really useful, and it's really practical, practical for other people that they want to improve their skills on speaking or writing. Also, in listening, I think listening is the main skill that you can improve when you are listening, to a podcast. But also you can transcribe, you can see the structure that the participants of that podcast use. Yes, it's something that you can do because it's really practical. Oh my god, you can learn grammar, you can learn writing, speaking. Is it possible? Yes, is it possible? And you know why? Because you can follow the way that they accentuate a word, a phrase, I don't know. You can follow that. In base of follow that, you can discover something new about accent. Because yes, the article mentioned a lot of contents that we have. Well, in fact, the article has a lot of material to work in classroom. In my slides, I decided to choose the most useful, and I consider could be interesting by some students. Yes, because not all the students want to learn the same. For that reason, we should question, we should ask. After that we have asked by what is the content that the student want to learn. We have an idea. In that idea, we can know much about the interest of the student. In this part, appear the genres that we have in the podcast. We have podcasts that are based on learn culture, grammar, or also mixes that, the grammar, the culture, and the tradition that we can know if we want to know about a country. No. In this case, if we want to know about United States, there are many There are many podcasts where we can discover there is a variety of this kind of podcasts. Also, I would like to 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 stay focused on a story, worried, excited. What can I do? You should listen the podcast that tells a story that engage to, oh my god, to stay waiting that. Also, we can encourage the students to create a podcast. It's really fundamental. Know that the students, through the creation of some podcasts, they can improve their skills on speaking. Also, they can learn how to write a script. So that is really fundamental for them. Because if in the future, if they want to share about a story, or if they want to create that emotion in their students, if they want to be teachers, obviously, or if they don't want to be teachers, if they want to be businessmen, they should know that the communication in their words is really important. So, yes. Thanks for the pandemic, we can discover a lot of ways in that we can communicate with many people. Thanks for the pandemic, we can know how difficult is try to stay on trend. But we can do it. We can do it. We are teachers. We should know how to work with the new tools that there are. Once that we can discover that we can stay day by day try to update something about of English teaching or something like that, because yes, we should know how to resolve the necessities that the students have. As final message, I would like to say it's been a pleasure talk about the podcast in virtual instruction. Yes, the pandemic changed all the way, all that we see. But I think it was in a good way. Yes, we lost many people in that moment. But we are discovering new ways to stay more updated, to stay day by day, try to do our best. So, bye bye. Has been a pleasure. See you.